This is Today's Business Leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, so on the show today, I have Janis Pettit back on with us. She came on a few months ago and we had a blast and learned a lot about what she does and found that she and I hit it off well and the audience enjoyed it as well. So welcome back to the show, Janis.
Thank you, Gabe.
We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is like leadership in business. And specifically, we're going to talk about CEOs and how they can either help their business grow or how they can sabotage things. So with that, I'll let you kind of take it away with some of your thoughts there, Janis.
Okay, great. So for some reason, this topic has been popping up lately. I've been having conversations with seasoned entrepreneurs, and they've been telling me their stories and also sharing stories of clients that they've worked with. And I know on my journey, so Gabe, you already know this, but just sharing it with the audience, I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I've had 4 successful businesses, and I've made every mistake in the book. Every one. And then of course, I've seen clients, because I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and I've seen those clients make the same mistakes. And I think as we get older, and I'm getting up there, we gain a certain amount of wisdom, where we look at things and we say, now I finally understand that if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had this bad result, right?
Yeah. And
so one thing I've understood over the years is that business problems are always well-disguised personal problems. And I mean, that's nothing I made up. That's a saying that's out there, but it's really true. It's really true. I think all entrepreneurs have a certain amount of fear that steers them in the wrong direction at one time or another. And that once you develop a certain level of self-awareness, and you see that for what it is, it's just fear that's holding me back, everything changes and you're able to push through that and make the right decisions for your business. So one of the mistakes I see CEOs and entrepreneurs making often is getting too emotionally attached to an idea.
Yes.
So you have this idea and you believe in it. I know people are going to love this. I mean, maybe it's an idea for a technology. Maybe it's an idea for an online course. Maybe it's an idea for a physical product, and you decide it would be really cool. And so you spend a lot of time and effort trying to develop it, and then it doesn't fly. And so, I mean, we've all done this. So the thing is, I've talked to entrepreneurs many times and said, well, I'm not convinced that's going to fly. And I'll tell you why. I don't see the need in the marketplace for it. Have you done some research? And it's not that hard now, right? We have Google for everything. You know, have you done some basic research to see if people are asking questions about this? Are they searching for this? Are they looking for YouTube videos for this? I mean, is there any kind of a need that you can prove? And they say, no, I just know people are going to want it. Now, I tell them, well, why are you know, here's a better idea. Here's an idea that fits perfectly with who you are and your knowledge. You could do this instead, and there's definitely a need for that. And they'll say, well, no, I really want to stick to this. And then inevitably it doesn't fly. So, you know, so the question is why? Mm-hmm. And the thing is, they're very emotionally attached to it, right? It's like a marriage. They're so attached to it.
Yeah.
And if you create a certain level of detachment, then you're able to be free and open to new ideas and new possibilities in your business. And this can trickle down into all kinds of little problems if you become very attached to ideas. Like, I'm attached to having a storefront downtown that cost me $8,000 a month when I could move a little bit out of town and pay $3,000 a month. And I really need that working capital for my business.
Yep.
And the truth is, it's really not going to affect the business.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm attached to being an urban business owner. That's just an example that popped into my head.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And what you're describing, another way that I've said this to people is when you start from ego, you're going to fail. And that's where, like you're saying, you're super attached to the idea. You're sure it's going to work. You just know, and you even get input. It's even bad, especially bad when people get input like, that's probably not going to work, or I would adjust it, and you're so hooked on your idea that you're blind.
That's one of the things that I liked about you from the time I met you. You do not have a big ego. I love that. So CEO does not mean Chief Ego Officer.
Yeah, I've worked for those types of people. It doesn't work very well.
Right. And of course, this is a personal growth thing, right? It's about connecting with who you are in your heart and not putting on a front for other people and thinking, well, I have to be an urban business owner because it makes me look really cool and everybody's going to think I'm just this like really cool urban entrepreneur, right?
Oh.
So, I mean, that's just a stupid example.
No, it's a perfect example because in my first business, when I was in my 20s, when I was full of ego and didn't know what I was talking about, I, bought the latest and fanciest vehicles and like did all this stuff that doesn't matter. Today I drive a now 10-year-old vehicle that works fine and looks great. And I don't have to, it's all those ego driven things that I can see really fast in a business and I can tell they're going to make it. But like you said, hopefully as we get older or more experienced in business, we gain some wisdom. Sometimes I wonder what is happening to people that have been doing it a long time and don't seem like they've gained any wisdom. But yeah, it's you're totally right, because that's the difference of success and failure. Most of the time, it's about focus. And also, I want to reiterate what you said again. Business problems are just personal problems. I like that. I've heard that in different phrases, not quite that way. You can't escape yourself.
No, you can't escape yourself. So another thing I've seen over and over, I've recently seen it with a woman-owned company, dynamite, really smart woman, young woman. She's got kids that are in their early teens. And another with a male CEO of a technology company who's in his early 60s and starting to look toward retirement, but he has a younger partner in the business. Now, in both of those cases, these people had a real fear of growth. So their business was at a comfortable point.
Yeah.
And particularly with women with kids, I've seen this, or women with grandkids, because I've worked with a lot of women entrepreneurs over the years. So the fear is, if I really break through this barrier and grow my business, because I know there's potential there, I'm going to be working 60, 70 hours a week. I'm never going to see my family. I'm going to be overwhelmed. My lifestyle will collapse. I'll lose any kind of time freedom, because really for most people, time freedom is as valuable as money.
Yes, absolutely.
So what happens is that fear of growth, which is fear, false evidence appearing real. We've all heard that phrase.
Yeah.
Is actually the opposite is true, because what I've said to them is, let's create a model where you can grow and actually work less. And oftentimes that works, because if you have ways of creating income that's not selling time for dollars, like residual income or passive income or retainer income or something like that, and you can outsource the delivery of those services, You may be managing that, but you're not the one doing everything, wearing all the hats, which most people are in a smaller business.
Yeah.
So what often happens, and I've seen this happen with clients, is that they're absolutely surprised that for the most part, they're working either the same hours they were working before or less, and they could have doubled their income.
Yeah.
Or doubled their revenues.
There's two pieces of that I want to touch on because I think it's really key. I think this is really, really valuable. One is about your own mindset and beliefs, and I'm going to share something somewhat related and just kind of be open about something that I think will be worth people hearing for my own experience. And then secondly, I do want to talk about how people get stuck in that mindset of I can't scale, or I have to do it this way, or they think what got them here will get them there.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll touch on that next. So the first part is, I think all of us have fear about different things, no matter what stage we're at. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're really honest with yourself, there's certain things that make you uncomfortable because you haven't experienced them, or you haven't self-reflected enough to work through it and figure out, why do I feel that way? Or why, like, you don't sit down and like have a nice conversation with yourself and kindly, in a loving way, talk yourself through it. So yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, I had a call with somebody, and it was a young woman, like maybe 30, like a little bit younger than me. And I realized that she really had something valuable to offer. And as I was talking through it with her, I was like, hey, this is a good fit. We're going to trade some services. We're going to move forward. And then she's like, yeah, I can totally handle that. I can solve this stuff for you in an hour. And like, she came highly recommended. And I had some discomfort about it. And afterward, I realized, I think that I'm actually just a little bit uncomfortable because I've never worked with a woman in that role. And just being completely honest, I was like, why do I feel that way? Like, I've never worked with somebody in that role. And I sat there and said, you know what, I think, and I'm going to prove my feelings as I proceed through it. I said, I think I've just never worked with a woman in that role, which is me being open and honest here and trying to self-assess and be self-aware and realize that maybe I just didn't think about that. I don't consider myself to be a sexist person. Like, we have probably 80% women on our team. I love working with them. It had nothing to do with that. But there was just something where I just didn't understand it, like at an emotional, subconscious level. And I said, you know what? So I'm definitely going to go try this because it's just a new experience for me. I'm sure she's phenomenal at what she does. It wasn't like a credibility check. It was just like, oh, that's different for me. And I think to have that level of self-awareness gives you the ability to work through fear, which is my example of the story. Because I have some weird like hang up about it. And I'm like, you know what, I'll work through it and then I'll prove out if it's a good fit or not, which is the important part. And that was a big realization for me as an example here, because what I want to ask you about is, how do we become self-aware enough to realize that we just have this unfounded fear about, oh, if I scale, I have to work 80 hours, or I'll never see my kids, or whatever the fear is, right? Like, how do we get to seeing it and then changing?
I think every self-sabotaging behavior from a business owner is based on fear. It comes from fear, and it's usually fear that you're not even aware of. Mm-hmm. And I think that over the years, like, our whole business environment has been about building a business from the outside in. So you go out and you take action steps constantly, and you drive away as hard as you can to get tasks completed and reach strategic goals. It's a very male-oriented business model that our whole business world has been built on. When we start to balance it with the female business model, which is more about working from the inside out, changing the inside, and that directly affects the outside. Yeah. It's more about relationship building and nurturing. If you rely totally on that, that's not going to work. There has to be a balance between the two.
Right.
And we're starting to approach that balance now. So a lot of people are still, and you know, we're still brought up it was worse when I was young and probably less so when you were growing up, but it's built on this idea that you set specific goals and you set up a schedule and you get to work and you do those tasks and you drive away, and that's the most important thing. And quite honestly, that does get results, but it can also get you burned out. It can make you unaware of the mistakes that you're making because there's no self-reflection there. So I believe that you really have to have some kind of practices that build self-awareness into your life. And I can remember I did this online telesummit once, or teleconference, and it was called Life Kicked Them in the Butt, but They're Soaring Anyway. And I interviewed 8 extraordinary entrepreneurs that had gone through really life-altering situations. 2 were brought up in very repressive communist countries and had done extraordinary things. One had been through cancer at 39 years old or 40 years old. I mean, just these extraordinary people that were very, very successful. And they said the biggest thing that they learned was that they had to access the inside in order to do extraordinary things on the outside.
Yeah.
So I think that we all think that maybe we're less than what we really are. And I think what we really are is these unique, brilliant people. We all have our little spark of brilliance that we can use to express in the world, but we can't do that if we're not self-aware.
Yeah, I would agree. Because the more layers you put on it, the more you try to do it somebody else's way, it's going to be a struggle for sure. And I really like what you said about like balancing the masculine approach and the feminine approach, because about a year ago, ended up in a Facebook group and started kind of working through some things for myself, and I realized like, man, like I don't have enough empathy. I don't have the empathy that I'm not displaying or using the empathy at the level I want to. And then I had somebody on an interview on the show, and he just talked about how he had spent a couple of years like really engaging in like building his feminine side. It was a guy who's super successful, and I was like, wow, that's really wise, like to balance out, because that really does make us whole people. We shouldn't be one way or the other, I don't think. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's definitely a good point, because doing is not the answer. Just like thinking and reflecting is not it is the marriage between the two. And I was reading Essentialism the other day, and it talked about in there how Jeff Bezos takes according to the book, I mean, I don't know what he does now, but he takes 2 hours a day and does nothing in the middle of the day, just so that he can sit and think. And I was like, I want to do more of that. Mm-hmm. And instead of just making it all, go about everything. So,
yeah. And
definitely.
When you first started to do that, you feel guilty because we've been brought up to believe that that's laziness. Like I have this one friend that's a successful financial planner, and he used to send out these emails saying, I'm sending this at 4:30 on Friday because you should still be at your desk because it's not 5 p.m. yet. And I wrote back and said, well, I don't work Friday afternoons. Why would I want to do that?
That's crazy. This year, because of like all that reflection and realizing that I could do better if I compressed my time, I've been taking Fridays off almost like 3 out of 4 Fridays a month. I don't do anything that I don't want to do. And I sleep in or hang out with my son or go away somewhere with Rachel. And that has forced me. And then I do all my coaching on Mondays for my coaching clients. So I actually only have 3 days to operate my business, which has made the business grow. It's made it way better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when you're caught in that startup mode, when you're not quite sure what actions are going to really make the business grow and you're just trying to do everything, it can be really hard to do that. But working with somebody, a coach, for example, that can help you get clarity around that, discard the stuff that's not going to be productive or help you,
Right.
and embrace the steps that are. That's really important. So, another one of the self-sabotaging behaviors, and this is another, chief ego officer behavior, is to assume that you know something about an area of your business that you don't know anything about. I mean, because I deal a lot with marketing, I see a lot of people thinking they know how to market their business, and they have no strategy at all, and it's just not working. They're wasting a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that happens in other areas of business. I mean, maybe you really don't know a lot about building a team. Maybe you don't know how to be a good salesperson. Maybe you don't know how to build relationships that will result in long-term revenue opportunities. Whatever it is, a smart, self-aware entrepreneur goes and gets the help they need from an expert to guide them in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think is the balance between like not knowing and causing issues for yourself? Because not knowing anything about anything and then acting like you know it all obviously doesn't work. What's the balance between that and then getting enough knowledge that you can delegate correctly or build it out right? But you obviously don't want to go out as an entrepreneur and learn all the skills and do all the work. That's not entrepreneurship. That's, insanity. So how do we balance getting enough knowledge to be effective in leading a team against like trying to learn it all and do it all? And of course, we don't want to not know anything and act like we know it all. So how do we put all that together, do you think?
I think part of it is there's so many wonderful assessments out there, finding out what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and then outsourcing the stuff that you're not good at. Like if somebody said to me, Janis, I personally don't have W-2 employees. My whole team is independent contractors, 1099s. And a lot of us that work virtually, we have that kind of a setup.
Yep.
But if somebody said to me, you need to set up a 401k in your business, you need to provide health benefits to your employees, you need a benefits package put together, I wouldn't know the first thing about how to do that. Mm-hmm. There are people that would sit down and do some research and try to do it themselves and cobble something together that's really not that great when they could outsource it. What about companies that you call and you can never get somebody on the phone? And I'm not talking about huge companies like I was on the phone with Spectrum today, right? I'm not talking about big companies like that. I'm talking about local businesses, like maybe it's a painting company or a landscaping company or a pest control or an accountant's office. You never get somebody on the phone because they just don't know how to do customer service, and it's hurting their business. What about companies that allow themselves to have 1 and 2 star reviews on Google that they never respond to, and so their overall rating is 3 instead of 4 or 5, and they're losing a ton of business because people are looking at that and saying, well, I better go to another company. I mean, those are just examples that pop into my head. But if you have that problem, you don't know what to do about it, you better get on the phone with somebody that can help you fix that fast.
Yeah, absolutely. What's been a time for you where like you were able to self-reflect or somebody pointed it out and you said, oh, I do need to go get help? Like, what was that process like for you?
Well, certainly, I started my business in 2002, and I've worked with several amazing mentors over the years. When I felt stuck and I felt like my business wasn't growing and I was spinning my wheels or going in too many different directions at once and needed somebody to rein me in and keep me back in my lane, because nobody can see the forest for the trees. Nobody. I don't care how good you are.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And then other things, I mean, one of the businesses I owned, as you know, was a restaurant in New York. It's a tough market and it's a tough business. And there were so many things I didn't know. And I did learn from other mentors who were really successful restaurant owners that I had become friends with. I don't remember how I met them, like through the restaurant association or something. And I would sit down and ask them questions, and they would just out of the goodness of their heart, they would give me ideas and advice and that sort of thing, you know? And then I did a lot of reading on my own as well. Like constantly being a student is really important. So I think overall, if something's not working for you, don't blame the marketplace, don't blame the economy. Do some self-reflection and say, what do I need to change in order to get back on track?
Oh.
You know?
Yeah, that's definitely that part of like, I've started trying to, I mean, I've for quite a few years tried to self-reflect and grow. And that's definitely, like we've said, like from the inside out is how you actually become successful in business, coupled with the right actions and the right support. And one thing that I've tried to do for myself over the years is try to start noting what I'm doing, or look back at my calendar and start to look for patterns of what happened or patterns of how I feel. And when you start to identify those patterns, then you're like, this keeps happening. It's not just a one-off. Like we all have one-off weird things that happen in business, but it's in recognizing those patterns, and then we can say, well, whatever I tell myself is fine, but if I look at the facts, then this is really what's happening. If I look at the numbers, or if I look at the the actual results of how I feel at the end of every day, if I keep track of that, then what's happening, what's getting me there. And that's been huge for me, is like starting to really focus on pattern recognition of, like I said, numbers or the outcomes from other people, or maybe it's the emotional outcome that continues to happen. That's where I start to go, why do I feel this way? Or why do we keep not making money on that? Or, why do we keep hitting this bump with the customer process where, we want it to be smooth, but we keep hitting this point? How do we engineer and solve that? And you can't self-reflect and you can't improve if you're working too much, or if you're only listening to your own ideas. I think both of those are pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, if you really dig your heels in and say, it's not me, so I've seen a lot of businesses do the opposite of that, where they're not happy with the results, so they're blaming their employees, or they're blaming the competition, or they're blaming the economy or the marketplace.
Yeah.
And they're not saying, I need to take personal responsibility for this and find out what the issue is and make some changes, because I don't want to lose my business.
Yeah. I always tell people, is there somebody standing behind you? No, it's you.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that we can solve things, when you take total, like, radical responsibility. I was coaching in one of my paid groups a few weeks ago, and there had been some discussion in the group about different things and like challenges and problems, and like, this isn't working. And I was like, this is enough. Like, that's not actually what's going on. I'm like, you actually need to take total ownership of the process, total responsibility. And then you can get on and work. And I have wonderful people in there, and they got it, and they're like, oh yeah, and they did the work and they get results. So we always need somebody to call us out on that, or, tell us, hey, pay attention. This is you. This isn't everybody else.
Yeah. And you know what? You learn this because you've done it. I mean, I used to be really good at being the victim. I was pretty darn good at that, like, well, this isn't working out, but I'm working so hard. So it's got to be because people just don't get it, or the economy's not that great. People aren't spending money on this. And I'd spend a lot of energy, complaining with a group of friends about why things weren't the way I wanted them to be. Mm-hmm. And, if you find yourself doing that, even briefly, okay, have a pity party for a few hours and then get over it and figure out what the issue is. Mm-hmm. Right. And then a lot of people are just resistant to change. I found a lot with older entrepreneurs being very resistant to technology and things like social media. I mean, I've had brilliant business owners, CEOs say to me, I'm really not interested in really engaging on social media because I don't believe in it. And I say, well, what does that mean, you don't believe in it? Well, I think it's fake. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means you're giving away all your information to people and anybody can hack you. And I've heard this a dozen times.
Yeah.
And I say, all right, let's break that down and dig down and find the truth in this. Advantages versus disadvantages. And when I presented them with the facts, they were surprised. But they had made up their mind and dug their heels in, and they just didn't want to do it. And they were hurting, sabotaging their business because of it.
And probably, like you said earlier, out of a place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
There was obviously no data behind it. But
It's not what I've known, so therefore it must be bad.
Yeah.
That fear of change.
I wonder how that happens to us in life, because I don't think as young kids, we're not afraid of change. Every day is a change. Everything's new and we're all about it and we're excited. And then how do we get to the point where we're afraid of change or we don't want to do that? How do you think that happens to people?
I think we get comfortable and we don't want to be uncomfortable. And, change forces us outside of our comfort zone. So for a while, we're frustrated and uncomfortable, especially when we have to learn something new. I know that's true with technology. I mean, it's moving so fast. We're constantly having to learn new technologies, particularly with what we do.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be that period when you say, well, how do I do that? I can't figure out how to do that one thing, and then it sends you off into a series of steps to try to figure it out. But once you've gotten it done, it makes your business so much easier. Like, here's another example. I'm more right-brained than left-brained, but I know the importance of having systems in your business. But for some time, I really didn't, and I was doing a lot manually, a lot with paper and email and all that. And one year, I decided I've had it. I'm going to automate as much of my business as possible. And I spent about a year doing that, one system after another. Multiple times I wanted to tear my hair out, but I got it done. And the following year, my life was so much easier and continues to be.
Yeah. That's a great example, because I think that's another thing that balances on what we were talking about. If you focus on just one thing a year, then you can take action while reflecting. You can learn a new process, or you can change and grow. And when we do it that way, then we're actually moving forward in a consistent manner. Whereas if we just think about it because we're afraid to change, then we'll die. If we just do only all taking action, which I'm all about taking action, it's good, then we can also die because we'll miss the warning signs. And I have become a big proponent of telling people, choose one goal for the year, maybe 3, but 3 is way pushing it. One primary one and maybe a couple other small ones, and that's what'll actually move you forward. Because a year is a long time, but it's really not either. The longer I go in this game, it's like a year is here and gone before you notice it. And if you focus on one thing and then it's a foundational piece, you can really scale and grow and start doing the right work. So definitely a good example. And technology is changing super fast all the time. But also, if you look back, over history, there's always rapid change. When we figured out the printing press, and then we invented cars, and then when the railway came out, there was always something new coming that felt disruptive. But in reality, I think it's more about our own behavior, like you said, of just wanting to stay comfortable and not actually wanting to shift. So.
Yeah, and then another fear I see often, Gabe, and this is really going to become a roadblock for people if they don't step into this, and that's the fear of really stepping into the spotlight with who you are. It's a lot of the work we do, getting people visible, because I had done, I had a career in television for some years before I was an entrepreneur, and I love helping people get their message out. And obviously video is the #1 medium in the world, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's really important for CEOs to step into the spotlight and be the face of their company and be talking to people about what they do and why it's important and how it can change their organization or how it can change their lives, and maybe teaching them a little bit about it. I mean, kind of like what you do with your podcast, where you're really addressing important issues for people that are trying to be entrepreneurs. And so stepping into the spotlight is the scariest thing for a lot of people because they're worried about other people judging them.
Yep.
Instead of thinking, I'm offering a service to other people, there's somebody out there that needs this message that will find it and it will really trigger something in them. And, getting people to feel comfortable and not self-conscious, is my hair right? Is my makeup right? All of those kinds of things, and just getting out there, stepping into the spotlight, stepping onto a stage and speaking, getting on a podcast, making some videos for their business. This is crucial because people are going to choose the one that's in front of everybody else. They're going to see the one that's the most visible is the one they're going to choose. So that's another huge fear that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And even for me, a few years ago when I made the decision to start doing a bunch of video, I started out with the wrong mindset of exactly like, oh, I don't want to sound dumb or say the wrong words or say 40,000 times like I did in the beginning. And when it's all in, when it's internally focused, it's ego focused and it doesn't work. And then we do what you just said is like focus on how can I serve and help somebody that's going to hear this. When we do it that way, then we're good to go. And like, it's like the pressure's off because it's not about you looking amazing or talking smooth or like saying the right words. It's like, hey, I hope it's just focusing on the person you're talking to or the one person that may hear it and imagining that one person and saying, how will this improve their life? And that's definitely key because when you shift that way, you can go on and on forever. Like in the sense that like there's no discomfort. It's about serving and helping your audience. It's so much easier when we focus outward and not inward in that sense. So quite an interesting path here in the conversation because in that case, we need to look outwards and like, how can we help and serve? And in other cases, we need to look inward and go like, what is the matter with me? So, but yeah, so definitely really good thoughts. And I appreciate you kind of having this conversation with us because that's what I always want to bring to the entrepreneurial conversation is the real things that are going on, the things that we need to solve or work on or think through, because that's what actually help us grow. That's what helps business grows. And I believe, true entrepreneurs are servant leaders and true entrepreneurship is what's going to make an impact and continue to make the world a better place. And it does definitely on many fronts start on the inside. So
it's really about being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So who you are inside in your heart, you're able to express that in your business. When you're in front of the camera, no matter what you're doing, you're able to express that and not have to put on a facade or a face. When actions come from fear and anger, they're not reflecting who you really are inside. And the work is about reflecting who you really are inside. So that means, like you said, servant leader. That means sometimes if we have an employee, we might have to practice tough love with that person. We might have to say, you've been late 10 times this month. I'm going to have to let you go.
Yeah.
But it's still coming from the right place. It's not coming from fear of making a mistake or fear of being judged or fear of not being worthy or fear of appearing unsuccessful. Whatever those fears are, when we operate from there, we usually self-sabotage and make mistakes in our business.
Yeah.
So, it's an important conversation because I think people come on a podcast and they think, I'm ready to take notes. I'm going to write down 4 things I can do today that are going to make me, $10,000 by the end of the month. Well, before you do that, do this work. And then the $10,000 will just kind of flow. You'll just know what to do.
It comes way easier. That's for
right.
Sure. You're totally right. All value comes from who we are, not, and then what we do comes out of who we are. And that's a much easier path to making an impact and providing value and making the money for sure. So, thank you for sharing all this. And tell us just for a minute, a little bit about what you do and who you're looking for client-wise and where they can find you.
Sure. So our website is the 10X Zone. That's the number 10. the 10X zone. And it's about being able to 10 times your influence, your impact, and your income. And we primarily work with experts and entrepreneurs, particularly people in service professions. We work with a lot of consultants. We work with a lot of CEOs that many of them have come out of corporate and now they've started their own thing, whether it's a consulting agency or it's a technology company, and they really want to become visible. They want to have that authority status in their niche. And so we help people find that spark of brilliance that their audience will resonate with, and then help them become visible in many ways. I mean, we may be doing video, we may be doing brand awareness for them, so we build their brand. We may be doing getting them booked on podcasts. We may be helping them create a real presence and an audience on social media, but really creating the kind of visibility that will attract business to them instead of them having to chase after it. We do a lot with LinkedIn with clients, but I don't believe in just teaching people, here's a 5-step system for LinkedIn. I believe that LinkedIn is a tool you use as part of an overall strategy to build key relationships that will build revenues in your business.
Yeah.
So, those are the kind of people that we work with and the kind of work that we do. And it's about building revenues, but it's also about building influence with your audience, which is like money in the bank. So the 10xzone.com is our website. And we also have something called a book called The Client Multiplier Method. It's for people that want to build a successful consulting business. And I think you can find that at clientmultipliermethod.com. So those are some of the things that we have going on.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Janis. We'll include that in the show notes and share that with everybody. And I always enjoy hanging out with you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Great, Gabe. It's so much fun to hang out with you too.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit todaysbusinessleaders.com.